Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Penn Vicarage on this Tuesday morning. Lovely to see you. Thank you so much for joining us for our Bible reading and reflection for today as we continue our adventure through the Psalms. And today's psalm is Psalm 145. It's another beauty, so without further ado, Psalm 145 it will be. I will extol you, my God and King, and bless your name forever and ever. Every day I will bless you and praise your name forever and ever. Great is the Lord and greatly to be praised. His greatness is unsearchable. One generation shall laud your works to another and shall declare your mighty acts. On the glorious splendour of your majesty and on your wondrous works I will meditate. The might of your awesome deeds shall be proclaimed, and I will declare your greatness. They shall celebrate the fame of your abundant goodness and shall sing aloud of your righteousness. The Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. The Lord is good to all, and his compassion is over all that he has made. All your works shall give thanks to you, O Lord, and all your faithful shall bless you. They shall speak of the glory of your kingdom and tell of your power, to make known to all people your mighty deeds and the glorious splendour of your kingdom. Your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and your dominion endures throughout all generations. The Lord is faithful in all his words and gracious in all his deeds. The Lord upholds all those who are falling and raises up all those who are bowed down. The eyes of all look to you, and you give them their food in due season. You open your hand, satisfying the desire of every living thing. The Lord is just in all his ways and kind in all his doings. The Lord is near to all who call on him, to all who call on him in truth. He fulfills the desire of all who fear him. He also hears their cry and saves them. The Lord watches over all who love him, but the wicked he will destroy. My mouth shall speak the praise of the Lord, and all flesh will bless his holy name forever and ever. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, another beautiful psalm here. This is the last of the Psalms where it says explicitly of David. Although the book is commonly known as the Psalms of David, David only explicitly wrote about half of them. But this is the last one that David says in the subscript that he wrote. And it's a typical David psalm in lots of ways. Firstly, because it's an acrostic. An acrostic would be where each verse begins with a different letter going through the alphabet. So it would be like the first letter beginning with A, B, C, D, and through. And there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. To which the clever dicks amongst you may say, there's only 21 verses in this. Well, the reason is, if you look at verse 13, your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, your dominion endures to all generations. Then it goes on to say, the Lord is faithful in all his words and gracious in all his deeds, which is, if you like, two verses in one. Now, the original Hebrew Masoretic text did not have verse 13b in it, but lots of old manuscripts do, and there's a recent one found at the Dead Sea Scrolls which has it in it as well. So most translations and so on do have verse 13b in it, and with verse 13b in, that makes 22 verses, if you like. That makes a full Hebrew acrostic. That makes it all fit, all work together nicely. So it's I just thought I'd throw that one in. It's a classic Hebrew acrostic. There are 8 in the Psalms, 5 of them written by David. David clearly loved his poetry. David was a musician, he played on the harp and so on. And as I say, of the Psalms David wrote, 5 of the 8 acrostics were written by him himself, this being one of them. So, how do we understand this? And I always say with these Psalms, if you sort of cut them up into bite-sized chunks, you take it as sort of a step at a time. And the way it works, this one, is you've got 1 to 3, you've got 4 to 9, 10 to 13b, if you like, and 14 to 20, and then the last verse is like verse 21 is like an extra postscript at the end as well. So essentially 4 sections, 1 to 3, 4 to 9, 10 to 13 b, and 14 to 21. And as I say, 21 is like a postscript at the end as well. So taking these sections one at a time. The first section, I beg your pardon, the way to think about these chunks is this. Each one, apart from the last one, there's always an exception, isn't there, starts with David praising God and ends with a description of God. So verses 1 to 3, he praises God. I will extol you, my God, and my King, and bless your name. And then verse 3 it says, great is the Lord and greatly to be praised. His grace is unsearchable. So each of the 3 chunks you've got praising God and then a description of how great God is. The last one's different for a reason, which I'll explain to you in a bit. So 3 of the 4 chunks, you've got David praising God, followed by a description of God. Now, verses 1 to 3, I think, are interesting in the sense that he talks about, I will extol you, my God and King. Notice here with David, for David, God is not just God. For David, God is King. Now, the king is someone that rules. And in my head, I've got David's great grandson, Jesus, saying, that your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as in heaven. Which means God comes first. It means that God is king. And for David, God is not just the one who made him, not just the one who delivers him and helps him, but for David, God is king as well. And God needs to be king of our lives too today. Then in verses 49, you have God's mighty works. And notice here, not only are God's works mighty, your mighty acts, it says in verse 4, but also notice God's, in verse incredible 8-9, God's incredible compassion. That the Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love. So God is not just powerful, God is mighty. God is not just almighty, God is all-knowing, and God is all-loving too. God didn't just make us, God doesn't just act in his world. As John 3:16 says, God so loved the world. God loves us and is compassionate to us. So hear the power of God, but also hear the compassion of God. Interesting verses 8 and 9 also. These are actually almost a paraphrase, or almost exactly the same words that God used about himself when he met Moses in Exodus chapter 34, verse 6. And these same words, interestingly enough, are used by Jonah. In the book of Jonah, when God helps the Ninevites, and Jonah goes and repents, and Jonah, in the end of chapter 4, gets into a great big sulk, because he didn't want God to help the Ninevites. He wanted God to destroy the Ninevites, because he hated Ninevites, and how dare God be kind to these people, because they should get what they deserve. That's kind of the way Jonah's thinking. And in Jonah chapter 4, verses 2 and 11, using pretty much these words, God says, why shouldn't I have compassion on the Ninevites too? For the Lord is gracious and merciful. So interesting reflection there. If we want God to be gracious and merciful, we have to allow God to be gracious and merciful to other people as well, including people we don't like the Ninevites. And Jonah had to learn that. So verses 8 and 9 are descriptive of the compassion of God, but also you hear it, the words from Exodus, but also the words in Jonah too, that the Lord is gracious to everybody. So verses 4 to 9 are about God's power, but also about God's incredible compassion too. Then in verses 10 to 13, you have God's works showing it to the world, and as a result, all work shall give thanks to you, O Lord. And then in verses 14 to 20, you have some incredible description here of the love and the compassion of God. Then in verses 14 and 15, you have here God blessing the people who are struggling. The Lord upholds those who are falling and raises up those who are bowed down. So here you have God's love for those who are struggling. And friends, if you're struggling, if I'm struggling, when we're having a hard time, when we may feel as though we're falling, when we feel bowed down, actually the Lord upholds us. The Lord will not let us go. So hear that. Then in verses 15 and 16, you have here God's provision for everybody in terms of food and provision of give us this day our daily bread. And here you have God doing exactly that, God opening the hand and satisfying the desire of every, and so you have God's provision of food, and God giving us, if you like here, our daily bread. Then you have God, verses 17, and then you have God answering prayer. The Lord is just and kind. The Lord is near to those who call on him, and those who call on him in truth. So God does, sometimes it may feel as though our prayers are just banging off a wall or whatever, but actually it's saying here that God is near to those who call on him, and all who call upon him in truth. He satisfies the desire of those who fear him. So here you have God hearing those who call to him. But then also you have God's incredible protection too, in verse 20. The Lord watches over all those who love him. And so you have God protecting those who look to him. But then finally in verse 21, as I said, interesting that the last section, he does it the way around. He talks about God first and then praises God at the end. And I think it's interesting because verse 21, if you like, is David's last verse. It's David's parting shot. And what are David's final words? And I love this because he nails his colours to the master. He says, "My mouth shall speak the praise of the Lord, and all flesh will bless his holy name forever and ever." Put that on his tombstone. Do what you like. David's parting shot of the world. My mouth will speak the praise of the Lord, and all flesh will bless his holy name forever and ever. I think that's a lovely way to finish. Friends, read it again. It's a beautiful psalm. Just get stuck into it. This is such incredible. The power of God, the compassion of God, God's protection, God hearing us, God lifting up. It's all in there. So just read it again, enjoy, and how would the prayer book put it? Read, mark, learn, then we digest, and just feed on that. Friends, thank you so much for watching. Do please share this with your friends so other people can also enjoy the love and the protection of God. So have a lovely day, friends.